The wind screamed across the endless white land. Snow and ice stretched in every direction, shining under a pale and weak sun. The sky was dark gray, heavy with clouds that promised another deadly storm. On this world, storms never truly ended. They only paused, waiting for their next strike. The alien mother pulled the thin blanket tighter around her small child. Her arms shook as she tried to shield the little one from the cold. Her people had lived in this frozen land for generations, but still the ice cut through them like knives. The child's breathing was shallow, soft gasps that made her heart race with fear. She had seen many children fall to the cold before. On this planet, compassion was not known. Every family cared only for their own. The tribe's rule was simple. The weak are left behind. The strong must go on. She had lived her whole life under this law, never questioning it. But now, as she held her child, she wished for something different. For the first time, she wished someone stronger would help her. But there was no one. There was only the storm. The snow howled like a wild beast outside the cave. The mother pressed her back against the icy wall, trying to block the wind that pushed through every crack. Her child coughed, the sound small, almost lost in the storm's roar. She whispered words of comfort, though she knew they were empty. Her people did not speak kindly. They did not waste soft words. But tonight, in this cave, she spoke them anyway, desperate to keep her child awake. The tribe had abandoned her only hours ago. They saw her child was too weak to walk, so they left. The mother had begged them, but their eyes were like stone. Survival, they said. We must go on. And they turned their backs, their shapes fading into the white storm. Now she was alone, her heart heavy with anger and fear. Her child's small hand clutched her arm weakly. The skin was cold, far too cold. The mother knew the end was close. She fought back tears because tears froze quickly here. She rocked back and forth as if her body's movement could create enough warmth to save the little one. But the storm outside only grew stronger. Snow piled higher at the entrance of the cave, sealing them in ice. Her breath came out in mist, every exhale reminding her that the air was getting colder. For the first time in her life, she thought of stories. Old whispers she had heard long ago about strangers who came from the sky. Her people laughed at such stories, said they were foolish tales. But in this desperate moment, she almost prayed those stories were true, that someone, anyone, could come and show her another way, a way where the weak were not left behind, a way where a child's life was worth fighting for. Her body shook violently as she pulled the child closer. She could not sleep. If she slept, both of them would freeze. So she forced herself to stay awake, to listen to every sound outside the cave. The storm howled, the ice cracked, and then something new, a sound that did not belong. A heavy thud in the distance followed by another. The mother froze, her eyes wide in the darkness. She had lived through many storms, but she had never heard this sound before. Her heart pounded, fear and hope battling inside her. Could it be another beast hunting in the storm, or could it be one of the sky strangers? The sound came closer, slow but steady. Something was moving against the storm. No one from her tribe would return. They had abandoned her. So who could this be? She pressed the child tighter to her chest, her breath quick and sharp. If it was danger, then the end had already come. But if it was not, if it was something else, then maybe her whispered wish had been heard. The child stirred weakly, a soft whimper escaping the small lips. The mother placed a finger gently over the child's mouth. "Quiet," she whispered. "Something is coming." The sound outside grew louder, crunching snow, heavy footsteps. She felt her pulse in her throat, her whole body tense. The storm screamed, but under it, the sound of movement grew clearer. It was not a beast, she realized. Beasts moved differently. This was someone. Walking through the storm, she leaned forward, eyes fixed on the cave entrance. Her mind raced with questions. Who would dare walk in this endless death? Who would come when no one else ever had? The snow at the cave's edge shifted. A shadow appeared, tall, strong, fighting against the storm's rage. The mother gasped, clutching her child as the figure moved closer. Through the blizzard's veil, she saw something impossible. A shape she had never seen before. Not one of her people, not any creature she knew. The figure was wrapped in strange material, glowing faintly in the storm. And in that moment, as fear and awe mixed in her chest, she knew her world was about to change forever. The shadow at the mouth of the cave grew clearer. The storm pushed against it with furious strength, but the figure refused to fall. Snow clung to the stranger's body, and a faint glow shimmered from pieces of metal wrapped around his arms and chest. The alien mother stared, her breath caught in her throat. She had never seen such a creature before. The figure stepped inside the cave, shaking the frost from his shoulders. The light from his suit lit the darkness, revealing his face beneath a clear shield. His skin was pale, unlike hers, his eyes sharp but filled with something she did not understand. It was not anger, it was not hunger, it was not the cold emptiness of her people. It was something else, something softer. The mother pressed her child close. her claws tight on the thin blanket. Her people had always told her that strangers were dangerous, that no one could be trusted outside the tribe, but the man did not attack. Instead, he dropped to one knee, his gloved hands reaching out not in threat but in concern. His voice echoed strangely through the shield over his face. She could not understand his words, but the tone was gentle. Her heart raced, unsure whether to fear or hope. The child stirred, coughing weakly. The man's eyes darted toward the small form in her arms. In that instant, his entire body moved with sudden purpose. He pulled something from a pack on his back, a small container. He pressed a button, and warmth burst into the cave like fire. A bright orange flame flickered inside a strange metal cup. The alien mother's eyes widened. Her people knew of heat only from the breaking of stone deep underground, but this man had created fire with his hands. The cave glowed with light, shadows dancing across the icy walls. The child whimpered, the warmth brushing against the small face. The mother felt the heat too, shocking and alive. She had never imagined such power. She looked at the man, confusion and disbelief filling her chest. Why would he do this? Why would a stranger give his strength to protect those who were not his own? The man knelt closer, holding his hands over the flame, showing her how to do the same. He pressed his palm gently near the child, then gestured to the fire. His meaning was clear. Bring the child close, let the warmth fight the cold. The mother hesitated, then slowly lowered her child toward the flame. The child's lips moved faintly, a weak sigh escaping as the warmth touched fragile skin. Tears burned the mother's eyes, but they did not freeze this time. They fell, hot and real, onto her child's face. The man saw this, and his expression softened even more. He opened his packs. Again, pulling out a strange cloth. It shone silver, thin as air but strong. He wrapped it carefully around the child. The mother almost pulled back, but the child relaxed, as if comforted. The heat stayed trapped inside the shining cloth. It was as if her child was being held by sunlight. The storm outside raged louder, shaking the cave walls, but inside, for the first time, there was warmth. The mother's fear battled with curiosity. Her people would call this man a threat. They would say he was tricking her, but she could not deny what her eyes saw. He had no reason to help her child, yet he had. No member of her tribe would have done the same. The man spoke again, words she did not know, but his tone carried meaning, patience, calm, determination. He pointed toward the cave entrance, then back to her and the child. He was telling her he would stay, that he would not leave them to the storm. The mother shook her head slowly, whispering, "You are not of my world. You are not of my kind." The man tilted his head, not understanding, but then he placed his hand on his chest. He said a single word, "Human." The sound was strange, heavy in her ears, but she felt the power in it. He was naming himself, a human. Her heart thudded painfully. So the old stories were true, the strangers from the sky were real, and one had come to her in her darkest hour. The human reached forward, his hand hovering near her arm. He did not touch, he only waited. It was a silent question. "Will you trust me?" The mother looked at her child, wrapped now in warmth, breathing a little stronger, her throat tightened. Every rule of her people screamed at her to push this stranger away. But her heart, the same heart that had begged for help only hours ago, whispered otherwise. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining with both fear and hope. The human gave a small smile. It was unlike anything she had seen before, not the cruel grin of a warrior, not the cold smirk of her tribe's leaders. It was soft, honest. And for a moment the storm outside seemed weaker. The fire crackled, the child slept, and the cave felt less like a tomb, more like a beginning. The human adjusted his pack, his eyes scanning the cave walls. He was planning something, searching for ways to protect them better. The mother realized then that this man was not passing through. He had chosen to stay in the storm with them, risking himself for a child not his own, and that was something she could not understand, but she could not look away either. She had never seen compassion before, but tonight, in the heart of the storm, she saw it with her own eyes, and it came from the stranger who called himself human. The fire burned low but steady, its glow painting the frozen cave walls with dancing light. The alien mother stared at the small flame as if it were alive. She had seen lightning split the skies, she had seen ice crush homes, but never had she seen fire born from the hands of a living being. To her people, warmth was a rare accident, a gift stolen from deep underground or from the violent clash of rocks. But this human, this strange man, had called fire as if it obeyed him. The child shifted in her arms, breathing slow but stronger. Each breath seemed to grow a little less shallow, a little more steady. The warmth of the flame reached the fragile body, fighting against the deep cold that had nearly taken the child away. The mother held her little one closer, her heart racing with disbelief. Her people would not have saved her child. They would not have even tried. Yet here was a stranger from the sky, risking himself to give them life. The human adjusted the fire carefully, feeding it with some black sticks he pulled from his pack. They glowed and cracked, releasing more heat into the small cave. He worked with calm hands, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The mother watched his movements, every action filled with purpose. There was no hesitation, no fee, or only determination. She wondered, why? Why would he give so much for someone he did not know? Her people's way was survival, always survival. Kindness had no meaning in the frozen world. It was weakness. Yet this human gave kindness without asking for anything. Her chest tightened with confusion and awe. The human noticed her gaze. He smiled faintly, his face soft under the strange, clear shield that protected him from the storm. He pointed at the fire, then at her and the child. His message was simple, clear, even without words. Stay close, stay warm, stay alive. The mother obeyed, shifting nearer to the flame. She felt its heat touch her skin, sharp at first, almost painful. But then, slowly, it sank into her body, chasing away the ache of the cold. Her eyes closed for a moment, a single tear slipping down. Not from sorrow this time, but from the shock of feeling warmth she thought she would never know again. The storm outside roared, the ice groaned under its fury, but inside the cave, the fire pushed back against the darkness. It was small, fragile, but it refused to die. And somehow, that tiny flame carried more strength than the endless storm. The child stirred again, eyelids fluttering. The mother gasped, her heart leaping as her little one opened tired eyes. For the first time in days, the child's gaze was clear, the weak lips parted, whispering something too soft to hear. But the mother knew. She knew her child had been pulled back from the edge of death, and it was because of the human. The human leaned closer, checking the child's small face. His eyes lit with relief. He reached into his pack again, pulling out another strange object, a small clear container filled with liquid. He held it toward the mother, gesturing for her to give it to the child. She hesitated, fear flashing in her mind. What if it was poison? What if it was a trick? But then she looked again at the fire, at the warmth, at her child's breath, stronger now, and she realized if the human wanted harm, he would not have saved them. She accepted the container with shaking hands, pressing it to her child's lips. The child drank slowly, each drop restoring life. Her throat tightened with a feeling she could not name. Her people had no word for this, but deep inside, she felt it. It was gratitude. The cave was quiet except for the crackle of the fire. But the silence did not last. Voices echoed faintly from the storm outside, sharp and cold. The mother stiffened, her body tense. She knew those voices, the tribe. They had returned, not for her, not for her child, but perhaps to see if she was gone. Her heart raced with fear. If they found the human, if they saw the fire, they would not understand. They would call him dangerous. They would call him a threat. They would try to drive him away, or worse, kill him. The human heard the voices too. He stood quickly, his eyes narrowing as he looked toward the cave entrance. His body shifted into a stance ready for danger. The mother grabbed his arm, shaking her head desperately. "Hide," she whispered, though she knew he could not understand her words, but the meaning was clear in her eyes. The human studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. He pulled something from his belt, a small device that dimmed the fire's glow, leaving only enough heat to keep them alive. Then he moved back into the shadows of the cave, silent and watchful. The mother clutched her child tightly, her heart pounding as the voices drew closer. The shadows of her tribe flickered across the snow outside. They would step inside any moment. They would see the flame, the warmth, the impossible. And when they did, the storm would not be the only danger. The mother looked at the child in her arms, then at the hidden human. She had to make a choice. Would she protect the stranger who had saved her child, or would she betray him to the tribe's cruel laws? Her people had always told. Her compassion was weakness, but tonight, in the fire's glow, she was no longer certain. The first figure stepped into the cave, ice falling from his shoulders, his eyes locked on the faint glow, confusion flashing across his face. Behind him, more shadows gathered. The storm outside screamed, but inside, a new storm was about to begin. The icy wind roared behind the tribe as they crowded into the cave. Their faces were sharp, their eyes hard like the frozen stone around them. They carried no warmth, no kindness, only the cold rules of survival. When they saw the faint glow of the fire, their steps faltered. No one among them had ever seen such light before. To them, fire was a myth, a dangerous thing whispered in old tales. The alien mother pressed her child close, her heart pounding like a drum. She knew what they would say. She knew what they would demand. They had left her to die. Yet here they were, standing in her only refuge. The leader stepped forward, his heavy breath fogging in the dim cave. His eyes narrowed as he saw the strange flame flickering. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice sharp. "What have you done?" The mother trembled, but before she could speak, the human moved. He stepped out from the shadows, tall and steady. The tribe gasped as one. Some drew back. Others raised their crude weapons. Never had they seen a creature like him, his glowing suit, his pale skin, his strange clear shield over his face. He was a being from their nightmares and their forgotten stories. The leader's eyes burned with suspicion. "You brought this thing here," he accused the mother. "You betrayed us." The mother shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, he saved my child. He saved us both." But her words fell like snow, melting before they touched the tribe. The human raised his hand slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. He spoke in his strange language, his tone calm and steady. The tribe did not understand, but his voice carried strength. The leader spat on the ground. "Lies," he growled. "No stranger gives without taking. No creature risks itself for the weak." He pointed his weapon at the human. "We end him now before he brings ruin to us all." The mother's body moved before her mind could think. She stepped between the leader and the human, clutching her child tight. Her voice shook, but she shouted with more strength than ever before. "No!" The tribe froze in shock. Never had she spoken against the leader. Never had anyone dared. The storm howled outside, but inside the cave, silence fell heavy. The leader's eyes narrowed into slits. "You would defy our law for this creature?" he asked coldly. The mother trembled, her heart screaming in fear, but she looked at her child, alive because of the fire, and she whispered, "Yes." The word echoed like thunder, shaking the air between them. The human's eyes softened, but he did not move. He stood ready, watching the tribe. The leader sneered, lifting his weapon higher. "If you stand with him, then you stand against us." The tribe shifted uneasily, some nodding, some frowning. Fear pulled at their faces, but curiosity flickered too. They had seen the fire. They had felt its strange warmth on their skin. It was dangerous, yes, but also powerful. One young hunter stepped forward, his gaze locked on the flame. He reached out his hand, just close enough to feel the heat. He gasped, jerking back, his eyes wide. "It burns," he whispered, "but it gives life too." The tribe murmured, voices rising with uncertainty. The leader barked at them to be silent, but doubt had already begun to grow. The human knelt again by the fire, feeding it carefully. The glow brightened, chasing shadows across the icy walls. The child sighed softly in the mother's arms, stronger now. The tribe saw this, and their whispers grew louder. Some eyes softened, others hardened with fear. The leader's grip tightened on his weapon. He felt his power slipping into the hands of a stranger. "You cannot trust him," the leader roared. "He will bring us death. He will bring us weakness." But the mother shook her head, her voice steady now. "No, he brings us hope." She stepped closer to the flame, holding her child so all could see. "My child lives because of him, because of this fire." Her eyes glistened, shining with something her people had never known. "Is life not worth more than fear?" The words struck the tribe like a spear. For generations they had chosen fear over life. They had abandoned the weak, called it strength, but now they saw a child breathing, saved by something they could not understand, and doubt tore at their frozen hearts. The leader raised his weapon higher, his face twisted with rage. He would not allow his rule to be broken. But the human stepped forward at last, his hand lifting slowly. He did not draw a weapon. He did not strike. Instead, he placed his hand on his chest. His voice rang out with one word, firm and clear: "Human." The tribe flinched, the sound strange and powerful. The fire crackled louder, almost as if answering him. For the first time in their lives, the tribe stood between two paths, one of fear, one of compassion, and they did not know which way to turn. The storm outside screamed as if demanding a choice. The flame burned brighter, daring them to decide. The clash of cultures had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The fire glowed brighter, filling the cave with golden light. Shadows danced across the icy walls, and for a moment the storm outside seemed far away. The tribe stood frozen in silence, their leader's weapon still raised, his voice caught in his throat. All eyes turned to the child, the small, fragile being wrapped in silver cloth, resting in the mother's arms. The child stirred, a soft sound escaping weak lips. The mother gasped, her heart pounding as she felt warmth spread through the tiny body. Slowly, the child's eyes opened, heavy but alive. For days she had feared she would never see those eyes again. Now they blinked in the firelight, reflecting the flame's glow. The human leaned closer, his gaze sharp but gentle. His hand hovered near, ready to help but never forcing. The child coughed weakly, and the sound filled the cave like thunder. The tribe flinched, as if a ghost had spoken. They had left this child to die. They had called it weakness. Yet here was life, breathing again before their eyes. Some of them whispered to each other, their faces pale with disbelief. A few stepped closer, their hands reaching out as if to confirm what they saw was real. The leader snarled, his face twisted with anger. "This means nothing," he shouted, his voice harsh. "One life does not matter. One child does not change the law." But even as he spoke, his words trembled, for deep inside, he too had seen what the fire had done. The child breathed stronger, her chest rising and falling with renewed strength. Her eyes turned toward the human, small and curious. In her faint voice, she whispered something, a single soft sound. It was not a word of her people. It was not a word at all, but it was directed at him, as if she somehow knew, as if she could sense the one who had saved her. The mother's throat tightened, tears slipping down her face. She pressed her lips to her child's forehead, whispering words of love she had never dared to speak before. Her people did not value such words. They called them useless, but in that moment, nothing mattered except the fragile life in her arms. Her heart swelled with gratitude, and she turned her gaze toward the human. Her voice cracked but firm, she said, "You gave her back to me." The tribe stirred, murmurs spreading through their ranks. Some looked at the fire with awe, others at the child with wonder. For the first time, doubt spread like a crack through the ice of their beliefs. If the child could live, if warmth could be given, then maybe the law of abandoning the weak was wrong. The leader felt the shift, his authority slipping away. He lifted his weapon higher, shouting, "Do not be fooled. This creature is danger. This fire is trickery." The human did not flinch. He simply stood tall, his eyes steady. He placed his hand gently over his chest, then pointed at the child. His meaning was clear, even without words. Life matters. Life must be protected. The mother's voice rose again, stronger now. "My child lives because of him, because of fire, because of compassion." The last word trembled from her lips, strange and new. Her people had no true word for it, but she spoke it anyway. The tribe wavered, torn between the leader's command and the truth before their eyes. A young hunter stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "I felt the warmth," he said softly. "I saw the child breathe again." Others nodded, their voices low but growing. The leader roared in anger. "Silence, all of you! Silence!" But his fury could not erase what they had seen. The child reached out a small hand, weak but alive. Her fingers brushed against the air near the human. He knelt slowly, lowering himself so his face was level with hers. Behind his clear shield, his eyes softened, and he gave her a smile. It was a gentle thing, a spark of warmth even brighter than the fire. The child blinked, and though she was too weak to speak, the gesture filled the cave with silence again. The mother held her breath, realizing what had just happened. Her child, who had been left for dead, had reached not for her too. Ribe, not for her own people, but for the human. And in that small movement, everything changed. The tribe looked on, their hearts confused, their beliefs shaken. For generations, they had believed only the strong survived. But now they saw strength in something new. Not in cruelty, not in fear, but in compassion. The leader's hands shook as he aimed his weapon. He wanted to destroy this truth before it grew, but his eyes faltered when he met the child's gaze. Even he could not deny the life that now burned there. His voice cracked with rage and fear. "This will destroy us," he said. "This kindness will be our end." The mother stepped forward, standing tall despite her trembling legs. "No," she said firmly, "this kindness is our beginning." Her voice carried in the cave, stronger than it had ever been. The tribe shifted, torn but listening. The fire burned bright, the child breathed strong, the human stood steady, and for the first time in the frozen world, change seemed possible. The storm outside howled louder, as if the planet itself raged against the idea of compassion. But inside the cave, a new kind of storm was forming, one born of hope, one born of life. The child had awakened, and with her, so had the first spark of something her people had never known, a future where compassion could exist. The fire burned steady, but outside the storm was growing wild. The wind shrieked like a living beast, rattling the cave walls. Snow and ice slammed against the entrance with violent force. The tribe shivered, even the strongest among them feeling the cold bite through their bones. Yet inside, the fire gave warmth, a fragile circle of life against endless death. The leader stood at the edge of the light, his face carved with anger. His eyes moved from the flame to the human, then to the child. Every heartbeat reminded him that his law was slipping away. The tribe no law. Anger looked only at him. They looked at the fire, at the human, at the mother who dared defy him. He felt his power breaking, like ice under a heavy step. The mother sat near the fire, her child resting against her chest. She felt the warmth soaking into her skin, chasing away the fear that had lived there for so long. Her people had always chosen survival over compassion, but tonight, she saw another path. She saw strength and sacrifice, courage and kindness. Her heart whispered that this was the truth she had been waiting for. The storm outside roared louder, the cave trembling with every gust. The human stood, his body tense, his eyes scanning the cracks in the stone. He understood danger was near. He pointed at the walls, then at the tribe, making swift gestures. Though they did not understand his words, they saw his urgency. He was warning them. The cave would not hold if the storm grew worse. The leader sneered, refusing to accept. "No cave has fallen," he barked. "We endure, we always endure." But his words were empty. The rumble above their heads betrayed the truth. The storm was not like the others. This one was greater. This one wanted to tear everything apart. The human moved quickly, pulling objects from his pack, strange rods, glowing tools, wires that hummed with hidden power. The tribe watched, whispering with both fear and awe. They did not know what he was building, but his hands moved with confidence. Every motion spoke of skill, of knowledge beyond their frozen world. The mother rose to help, placing her child gently on the silver cloth. She steadied the rods as the human anchored them to the icy floor. Her heart raced. She did not understand what he was doing, but she trusted him. Trust was another word her people never used, yet now it lived inside her, strong and unshaken. The leader shouted again, his voice echoing in the cave. "You waste time, this storm will pass. It always passes. Why serve this creature? Why betray your own?" The mother turned to him, her eyes burning with fire of their own. "I do not betray," she said, her voice sharp. "I protect, as he protects, as none of you ever did." The tribe shifted uneasily, the crack in their faith growing wider. Then the ceiling groaned, a crack splitting through the ice above. Snow and shards of frozen stone rained down. The tribe cried out, pressing against the walls in terror. The storm screamed louder, shaking the cave like a drum. The human finished his work, driving the rods into the ground. They hummed, glowing faintly. He gestured for everyone to move closer to the center. Few obeyed at first, but when more ice fell, fear pushed them forward. The leader refused, standing apart, his weapon still raised. He roared above the storm. "This is weakness. This is death. Only the strong live." But his words sounded hollow now. The child coughed, small but alive. The fire burned brighter, refusing to die, and the tribe's eyes betrayed their doubts. The mother shouted above the storm, "Look at her. Look at the child." Her voice shook with both fear and strength. "She breathes because of him, because of fire, because of compassion. Tell me, what law can kill what has already saved life?" The storm answered with a violent crash, a section of the ceiling collapsing. Snow poured in, freezing winds slashing through the fire, but the rods the human had planted glowed brighter. They formed a shield, invisible but strong. The worst of the collapse bounced against the barrier. The fire flickered but held. The child trembled but survived. Gasps rose from the tribe, their fear mixed with awe. The human stood firm in the storm, his figure like a wall against the chaos. He risked himself for all of them, not just the mother and child, even those who had cursed him, even the leader who wished him dead. He saved them all. The leader stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. The storm howled around him, but for the first time he looked uncertain. His law had no power here. The human strength was not in cruelty, but in sacrifice, and it had kept them alive when his pride would have killed them. The tribe huddled near the fire, their faces pale but changed. They no longer looked at the leader with blind loyalty. They looked at the human, they looked at the flame, and in their eyes was something new, a spark of hope, a spark of compassion. The mother clutched her child, her heart swelling with both fear and pride. She had made her choice. She had chosen to stand with the human, and now the tribe saw why. The storm raged, but inside the cave another storm was ending. The storm of doubt, the storm of blind obedience. From its wreckage, something new was being born. The clash was not finished. The leader would not give up easily, but the tribe had seen too much to return to the old ways. The human had shown them fire, had shown them compassion, and with every breath of the child, that truth grew stronger. The storm of choices had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm outside shrieked through the frozen night, but inside the cave the fire burned steady. Its light wrapped around the frightened tribe, chasing the shadows from their eyes. The rods the human had planted still glowed faintly, holding back the worst of the storm's fury. For the first time, the people realized they were alive not because of their old laws, but because of the stranger who had come from the sky. The leader stood apart, his weapon shaking in his hands. His authority was crumbling like ice under the fire's heat. He glared at the human, at the mother, at the child. Hatred twisted his face, but behind it lived fear. Fear that his rule, his way, his law of abandoning the weak, was dying in the firelight. The child coughed softly, then breathed stronger. The mother's arms tightened around her, her heart swelling with relief. The sound filled the cave, soft but powerful. Every member of the tribe turned to look, their faces changing. They had left this child to die, yet now she lived, and her life was proof that the human's way was stronger than their cold traditions. The leader roared above the storm. This fire, this creature, will destroy us. Weakness will spread, and our people will fall. But no one moved to follow him. The tribe looked at the human, who stood tall with steady eyes. He had no weapon raised, no demand, no threat. He only gave, and gave again. That was his strength, and they could not deny it. The mother rose to her feet, her child held close. Her voice trembled but carried across the cave. You left us to die. You called it law, but law did not save us. Law did not breathe life into my child. This human did. Her words struck like fire through ice, burning into every heart. The tribe murmured, doubt breaking their silence. Some nodded, some lowered their eyes. The leader's face twisted deeper with rage. He lifted his weapon, pointing it at the human. If no one else will act, I will end this lie, he growled. But before he could strike, a small hand moved. The child, weak but alive, reached out toward the human again. Her tiny fingers stretched through the air, searching for him. The human knelt without fear, lowering himself so her hand touched his gloved arm. The firelight glowed in her eyes as she whispered a faint sound. It was not a word, not in any language, but it carried meaning. It carried trust. The cave fell silent, the storm outside muted against the soundless moment. Even the leader faltered, his weapon shaking, for no law, no rule could erase what they saw. A child who had been left behind, choosing to reach for the stranger. A stranger who gave without demand, who protected without reward. The human looked up, his eyes meeting the tribe's. He placed his hand on his chest again, his voice steady as he spoke his word. Human. Then he pointed to the fire, then to the child, then to the mother. His meaning was clear, even without translation. Compassion saves. Compassion is strength. The leader roared in frustration, his pride breaking apart, but the tribe no longer stood behind him. They had seen enough. Slowly, one by one, they stepped closer to the fire, closer to the human, their eyes wide with something new, something fragile but powerful. Hope, the leader shouted again, but his voice was drowned by the storm outside. He realized then that his power was gone. The old law had cracked, and nothing could mend it. With a final glare, he turned and stormed out into the blizzard. His shadow vanished into the white night, swallowed by the ice. The tribe huddled near the flame, trembling not from cold, but from change. The mother looked at them, her eyes wet with tears. She whispered softly, compassion. The word felt strange in her mouth, but it burned bright in her heart. The tribe repeated it in low voices, testing its weight. They had no word for it before, but now it was theirs, a gift born from fire, born from a human. The child slept peacefully, her breath even and steady. The mother smiled faintly, the first true smile of her life. She turned to the human, her voice breaking with emotion. You have given us more than fire, more than life. You have given us a new path. The human did not understand her words, but he understood her tone. He gave a small nod, his eyes warm, and for the first time the frozen cave felt like home. Far above, hidden in the storm, a faint signal blinked from the human's broken ship. A call reaching the skies, waiting to be answered. The mother did not know what it meant, but she saw the way the human's eyes lifted with hope. He had saved them, but he too was lost. Perhaps soon, others like him would come. Perhaps the frozen world would no longer be forgotten. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cave burned a light that would not die. A small fire, a single child, a stranger from the stars. Together they had changed everything. Compassion had come to the frozen world, and with it, the promise of a future.